And I want to welcome you to Torah on the Go. Whether you are walking around the neighborhood with your dog or you're on your Peloton, that's right, I'm thinking of the Pacino family, we get strong feedback on all of my little phrases. And so they like the Peloton reference. Well, actually, one son likes the Peloton reference, one son doesn't like the Peloton reference, and I can bet which one works out. So we are here now, and I am thrilled to be sitting next to Cantor, Jackie, Rafii. Thank you for joining me on Torah on the Go.
Thank you so much for having me, Rabbi Lebovitz.
All right. Well, we are going to talk a little bit about the Joseph narrative. We're nearing the end of the book of Genesis, and we're nearing the end of our season. This is the beginning of the run of the last 10 episodes, and there's a lot to learn from Joseph. Joseph is fascinating, and Joseph is the father not only of the kind of whole chapter of Egypt and the reason why we go down, he's also the inspiration for one of the greatest musicals of all time. So Joseph is a dreamer. Okay, the Torah tells us, Vayechalom Yosef Chalom. So he dreams a dream. All right, and he brings it to his brothers who hate him, and then he dreams another dream, and he brings that to his brothers who hate him. What does it mean that he dreams? What does it mean that all of the other characters up until this point in Genesis, God speaks to them? God speaks to Abraham, God speaks to Sarah, God speaks to Isaac, God speaks to Rebekah. But to Joseph, God doesn't speak directly. Joseph is inspired by these dreams. Do you think that makes him more relatable, or do you think it makes him a lesser character in the narrative of Genesis?
I think it makes him way more relatable. I think that God evolves throughout Torah and represents God's self in different ways and communicates in different ways. And I think very few of us have visions of God speaking to us directly in broad daylight and seeing, the face of God and the fire of God and the smoke of God, although that's later in Torah. I think that it's a much more relatable version, as many people dream and many people feel that they receive messages through dreams that they don't receive in their waking hours.
Do you dream?
I do dream very vividly. Do you dream?
I also dream incredibly. I watch epic films while I'm sleeping.
Oh my gosh.
And
Same.
I wonder. I've met people who say that they've never dreamt in their life, and to me that's crazy because I just take it for granted since I was little. This has always been.
Yes.
And I wonder. It feels like a photo stream in my mind. Like I walk back into a picture or a setting or a something of another time in another place. I don't know if you've ever dreamt like we were sitting back in your elementary school
And
classroom.
I haven't studied at all for any of the finals.
Right, exactly.
I haven't gone to class all semester. These are my dreams of college. That never happened, but yes.
Right.
A lot of anxiety dreams.
So you have these. So that was my point. You have most of us dream, and it ends up we can interpret them to mean anxiety.
Yeah.
But Joseph dreams of grandeur. Joseph's dreams are always about future, and they're not leaning on the photo stream. They're imagining something new that's coming. He has 3 sets of dreams throughout the story. One of them is, of course, this very beginning where he tells his brothers. The second set is the set that he interprets in prison, and the third set is the set that he interprets for Pharaoh. Right. And all 3 of the dreams, he is able to interpret them, and they're all about future times. They're not at all a reflection on the past. And I feel like most of my dreams are about the past. How do you take Joseph's dreams, and how do you relate to them?
His dreams, well, I think they're very inspiring. I also think that they have somewhat of an evolution. His the first encounter with Joseph that we see of his dreams, it's about himself and the way that he relates to his family members. So he sees himself as superior, and that they're going to bow down, even if that's true. That he sees himself as superior, and people kind of deferring to him. And in the second set of dreams in prison, he interprets the dream of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker of the king. And one thing I noticed as I was rereading the story is that he is really sensitive to people around him in waking hours. He's able to notice Pneichem Raot. He's able to notice that their faces were downcast. They were looking sad. They weren't feeling well. And so I think that he's maybe becoming more attuned. He seems less attuned when he's in the presence of his brothers. Like, maybe you shouldn't say that you had that dream. But here he's attuned to their faces. And then when goes to interpret the dreams of the Pharaoh at the time, he's more attuned to a more global crisis coming. So
Right.
it seems that he's just becoming more aware, removing himself from thinking only of himself and thinking more about the outside world.
Right. The Torah commentator Chizkuni thinks that he uses this ability to increase his own stature in front of his brothers. But I actually think the way you're saying is true. It could apply to all of it. Every time that he's in a dream interpreting scenario, he uses it to increase his stature in front of the people that he's with, whether it be the cupbearer and the baker, or whether it be Pharaoh himself. He comes along and he says, I have the superpower.
Yeah.
Tell me your dreams. The dreams are all so straightforward. Like to me, I always read the story and think to myself, it's a complete idiot that doesn't understand what these dreams are about. But he gets it, and he seemingly lives in a world where nobody seems to get it around him.
Right.
He has an ability that none of them have. Abraham didn't have that, presumably.
Right.
Abraham had the ability of prophecy, of recognizing monotheism.
Yes.
Isaac's blindness, he doesn't really present an ability that nobody else has. Jacob has guile. Joseph has a kind of superpower in this way, and he is able to prove himself as special. And to me, it feels very relatable, because I feel like in each of us there's a special innate quality or special innate ability that makes each of us special.
I think you're right about that. It's a really interesting way to look at it. It might also be that dreams are our special conduit to God, to divinity, to reading beyond the lines. And you mentioned earlier that some people say, I don't dream. I think there's evidence to show that everybody dreams, but you just may not remember the dream. I'm pretty sure that there's different layers of sleep, and so it's whether you remember the dream. And there's also evidence to show that it's a muscle that's exercised. So if you are in the habit of waking up, sometimes we remember the dream right when we wake up, but if we don't think about it or talk about it or write it down, then it fades from our memory. So perhaps it's the same. Maybe our connection to God can be thought of in the same way, that if we exercise the muscle and spend time praying or spend time trying to communicate with God, perhaps we'll have more of an ability to do that, or more of a connection.
Fascinating. I obviously think you're right, and this comes from somebody who leads us in prayer often. When you lead the community in prayer, whether it be the high holidays or whether it be Shabbat services or any other time during the holidays, do you ever get a divine spark, something where you feel like, oh, that was a very special moment?
The silent Amidah is that time for me, and I often, while obviously I'm very connected to the liturgy because I'm davening the liturgy, that is a moment where freedom is encouraged, where creativity, spontaneity of prayer are encouraged. So I often, in recent years, have found myself just closing my eyes and intensely concentrating. And in those moments of quiet, surrounded by community, I do find often a spark comes, or a little nugget, or some way of looking at the world that I hadn't really had time to slow down and think about. Because the rest of services, and I'm sure you understand this, we're kind of on and responsible for leading. So to have that space, I think allows, and I think this is something we can apply to our lives too. Maybe dreams are space for, we have this like busy life, and we take in so many things, we don't have time to process it. Dreams are a moment to have space and think about them.
Right, that's amazing. Yeah, that's exactly what dreams are. And so much of our daily life is programmed in a way. Like, we walk into meetings and we know what we're supposed to think about. Yeah. And when we close our eyes and go to sleep, we're finally freed to think about whatever it is that's happening beneath the surface. Yes. I actually think that the Joseph narrative in so many ways is a narrative about what's going on beneath the surface. Mm-hmm. We end up as the children of Israel, as Joseph and his brothers, end up acting really nasty to each other, and end up in this terrible place in Egypt as a result. Yeah. None of that is spoken, right? So the brothers don't tell. We know that they hate him through the narrative. It says that they hate him, and it says, "Look, here comes the dreamer," and they beat him up, throw him in a pit, sell him. But they never say to him, like, "We can't stand you so much, we're going to get rid of you." Right? That's never actually brought into the surface until it all erupts. And I think a lot of the Joseph narrative is about what's going on underneath the surface. Yeah. And maybe that's exactly what dreams are. That's what dreams represent. Mm-hmm. As a parent, do you respond differently when your child wakes up from a nightmare or wakes up crying, when you see her laughing in her sleep? Do you have I mean, I always thought that was the most amazing thing in the world when I would watch the kids sleep and then they would start laughing for whatever reason. I thought that was like magical.
It is, yes, it is magical. Did your kids also, I mean, I'm sure all kids do, but your kids had nightmares?
Nightmares and dreams and everything, you know, and I also recognized that I was sometimes the source of them. Like it was something I had watched on TV that day or whatever it is. And then the kids say, you know, and Blair would warn me and tell me like, don't, you know, turn that off. And I wouldn't. And no, and sometimes it wouldn't. But I also think that this new generation, I think that we deprive them of the ability to dream in some ways because they live with their phones and the technology and the photo stream. Yeah. So there never is a forgetting of almost anything. Like they always know vacations from years and years ago when they were a baby because they see it on our phones and they see it on their phones and their tablets and everything else. So I can't tell if that's going to, you know, lend them more opportunities to dream about it or that's
stifling.
That's a stifling, right? That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's such a good point. There's also, it's like these experiences are curated for you. All of these apps are creating the highlight reels of your life, and people are presenting themselves on social media in the most, you know, dream-like aura. Yep. So I wonder if, to your point, it's kind of stifling our opportunity to be creative and create. And by the way, I think nightmare, as difficult as they are, I think nightmares are just as valuable as dreams. So I think there was a nightmare that Joseph interpreted of the baker. That was the difficult dream. I think those are just as valuable, and you know, just this darkness and light in our lives. We can't turn away from it. I do feel like, to your point, these social media streams are kind of maybe stifling one part of life and not allowing us to interact with it. Right.
When you wake up in the morning, and I don't know if everybody has this experience, so I'm just this is like a moment of therapy for me, perhaps. But
I'm here for it.
Thank you. When you wake up in the morning and your phone suggests like photos from a year ago today. Okay, or like 5 years ago today, whatever it is. Sometimes they're memories you really want to relive. And sometimes they're like, it might be a nice moment from a trip where like you remember something horrible that happened on the trip as well. Do you know what I mean? Like it brings back, and you're not ready. You're not necessarily in a place where you want to relive this. But my phone does. And so we're kind of forced into it.
We're forced into it. Exactly.
It makes me think of like, I don't know if you've seen this movie or everybody's going to understand the reference. There's a great movie that Tom Cruise was in called Vanilla Sky, where you don't realize, but he's, now I'm going to spoil the whole movie for everybody who hasn't seen it, but here you go, spoiler alert. He's living in a dream world at a certain point because something went wrong, and we don't understand this completely while you're watching the movie until you get to the end. It's a wonderful movie. Cameron Crowe, amazing. Cameron Diaz, also in the movie. She's great. And this is going to become a Vanilla Sky episode very quickly. But I don't think that dreams are a place we're supposed to live. That's the point where I'm trying to get to. It's like things happen in life. We look back at them. And when we're thrust into that moment unwillingly, or when we are caught in that moment, or we're caught in a cycle with technology where we have to relive those moments, whether we want to or not, then it becomes a very strange kind of futuristic type movie like Vanilla Sky.
Yes, and Inception.
Where exactly.
Reality and dreams are blended, and you don't know which one you're in, and that can be so harmful.
So harmful. I walk around. I think Inception was actually a very Jewish movie because the dreidel, I always interpret that as a dreidel.
Oh my God.
Leonardo DiCaprio spins that top. I always thought it's a dreidel. But I could be wrong. I think
if it lands on Gimel, it's reality. If it's not, it's exactly.
Suddenly this is becoming a Hanukkah episode. Yeah. That's right. But no, I think every movie is Jewish. Right? I think every character in every movie is Jewish. Right. That movie was also about dreams and also being about being trapped in dreams, which becomes like a horror film almost, or becomes a suspense thriller, instead of being, you know, this kind of euphoric celebration of what's possible. Yeah. So now I end our episode thinking maybe the Joseph narrative is about what happens when dreams meet reality. How do we reconcile those two ideas in this world, and how somebody needs to navigate those two realities as they synthesize and become one.
So it's like, what do you do once you have the dream? What do you do with it? How do you interpret it? And how do you make it a reality? Or if it's a message telling you to turn the other way, it's what you do with it.
It's what you do with it that counts. And isn't that the truth about so many things in life? Like so many of us receive abilities or receive opportunities, and it's what you do with it that counts. So Joseph absolutely sees these dreams and pronounces them all, okay? And perhaps Joseph is a character who shares too much. That's something that he can certainly learn as a lesson. I ended this episode with a kind of different understanding. Maybe Joseph stands as a character who teaches us how to reconcile our dreams, whether they happen when you fall asleep at night or whether they happen in your heart about what it is that you want to happen, what you want to occur in life. How do you reconcile those dreams with the life that you're living? And Joseph is forced to do that at the best of times and the worst of times. And we've been forced to do that ourselves.
Yes.
And in so many ways, we're examples of people who follow their dreams.
Yes.
And we need more people to follow their dreams towards living Jewishly. And so thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And so we want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to spend time learning with us. It's an important part of what we do as a clergy at Valley Beth Shalom is learning with you as often as we can. And Torah on the Go provides a great opportunity for that.
And maybe you'll be inspired to write down your dreams or listen to them and share them with us. We'd love to hear them.
Email us. Email us at vbs.org/podcasts and submit your dreams. And
Rabbi Lebovitz will interpret them.
We'll interpret them on live on the air for all of you. All right. Have a wonderful day.